in session 2, I'm very, very excited to invite 4 of our distinguished guests today to the stage. So each panelist will deliver a 10-minute presentation first, and then we'll move on to the Q&A session by inviting them to the stage. So if you have a question, please keep it for a bit longer. Okay, to open the floor, I am pleased to welcome Julie Yoon-young Lee, a senior journalist at BBC. Julie has spent over 14 years in journalism across Seoul and London with a trusted voice on Korean culture, often providing very insights regarding Korean-related issues for many BBC programs. Especially her recent feature on K-pop demon hunters has attracted international attention. Without further ado, please welcome Yoon-young Lee.
Hello. Hi, my name is Julie Yoon-young Lee, and I'm a senior journalist working for the BBC. So I've been with the BBC for about 7 years. Obviously, I was working as a TV reporter back in South Korea for about 8 years. And today, I want to talk about how the BBC's coverage, especially on Korean culture, has evolved or changed past 7 years while I was at the BBC. The BBC, I was working as a TV journalist in South Korea, like I said, mainly covering some of the local news, social affairs for a local audience in South Korea. So for me, it was kind of really interesting experience for me to work for the international media organization, because you can actually see how the world and global society see your own country and what kind of stories they're interested and they want to know more and how they react to those local stories. So in that sense, I actually had the privilege to see how the global view of Korea has changed or evolved in the past 7 years. Because I believe those years were just a fascinating period for Korean culture, what we can actually call the golden age of Korean culture. And I could actually feel its global influence right inside the BBC newsroom. So for example, not long after I moved to London, Parasite won the Oscar, BTS made a big history on Billboard chart, and obviously Blackpink broke records as the most successful K-pop choreograph ever. And then we had Squid Game, which became the Netflix most watched series ever. And last year, we had novelist Han Gang won the Nobel Prize in Literature. And this year, we had K-pop Demon Hunters, became the most watched Netflix film of all the time. So, and of course, BBC covered all these great Korean culture stories all along. But my question is, how has the BBC covered the rise of Korean culture over time? So if we look at the BBC's coverage over the years, we can actually see a clear shift. So I would say it's from curiosity to insight. So in the late 2010s, most of the stories at the BBC were pretty reactive when it comes to Korean coverage. So they usually focus on the scale of BTS fandom or in the global success of Parasite. At that time, coverage was mostly about why Korean pop culture was so popular and how it actually became such an interesting global trend. That was the kind of the question that I actually got. So when I first appeared, on the live TV, in the BBC, it was about the K-pop sex scandal in 2019. But back then, K-pop story was still relatively new to many viewers. So things like, oh, I heard in K-pop, I know what it is, but I don't know what exactly it is and I don't know much about it. So that was kind of the normal reaction I usually get. So whenever I go on live air, producers often ask me, I know K-pop is really big, globally, but some of our audience don't really know much about it. So please explain just briefly what the K-pop is and how big this industry is. So that's the question that I actually got before I go on live. But things began to change in the early 2020s. With the rise of the global streaming platform like Netflix, and obviously the massive success of Squid Game, Korean culture was no longer just a curiosity. So it actually became a subject of deeper analysis and social context. So for example, like a BBC stories about Squid Game, if you look it up, It actually explored not just the show's popularity, but it also shows what it actually revealed about Korean society and beyond. Things like the competition, inequality, and capitalism, all those kind of things. So around this time, there were actually more in-depth features, including some documentaries analyzing female narrative in Korean drama. This is the work that I actually worked on with my colleague. And some of the direct interviews with the Korean directors and actors, we can actually see more of that kind of pieces at the BBC. So, for example, the BBC covered issues like bullying in K-pop, legal debates over idols' rights, and even dating controversies. And at the same time, if K-pop artists performs on major British stages, like 17th Glastonbury debut, they were also covered as a major culture stories. So I remember the Burdington documentary was also released around this time, showing that the BBC is now willing to explore both the bright and the dark side of the K-pop industry. So now my question is, which Korean content did BBC focus on this year? So in the past, even with the massive global popularity, there were still doubts, like this might be just a fad or just a passing trend. So I understand that. But basically, if you look at some of the articles this year's BBC coverage shows that the Korean culture now sits at the center of global entertainment. So there was this Blackpink Wembley concert in the story just a few months ago, and when BTS member has completed their military service last summer, we also covered the story quite often whenever there was a member discharged. So around this time, I also appeared so many different BBC programs very often to give analysis on the K-pop and its global impact. And obviously, another major moment of this year was the success of K-pop Demon Hunters. So at first, it was covered just as a standard entertainment story, but as it exploded in global popularity, our newsroom also decided we should totally do more on this story. So I wrote this in-depth feature story to explore why this film resonated so much globally. But interestingly, when I first started writing this story, we were not even sure how big this film would actually get. So we kind of rushed into publishing the story over the weekend. But soon after my piece went out, the film just kept growing and growing and eventually became Netflix's most watched film ever. So with that, I got invitations from all kinds of BBC programs, not just only programs like BBC Outside Source, which often cover K-pop stories a bit, but also from other programs like Front Row, Newsbeat, even 5 Live that usually cover the breaking stories. So I just feel like it was a very different level of interest internally, I could actually feel. And another interesting thing for me was that what kind of question I actually get from the producers. So they don't ask, what is K-pop? Please explain what the K-pop is, that kind of question anymore. Some of the things that I found interesting while I'm covering this, K-pop Demon Hunters, people ask me questions like, is this another sign of K-pop genre growing across the world? Or what's the next for the evolution of this genre? Like K-pop appearing in more films and TV series is totally different kind of question. So I think with the success of this K-pop Demon Hunters, the BBC is now looking at K-pop not just as a musical trend, but as a creative language spreading across the media industries. And finally, BBC coverage now goes way beyond K-pop, looking at closely, Korean film, dramas, and reality shows, and now even literature. So with Hangang's Nobel Prize, the BBC covered more stories on Korean literature, for example. And just last week, when we actually talked this a little bit about in the first session, but we covered the writer Park Se-hee, who wrote I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. So some of you might already know, but her book actually sold over 100,000 copies here in the UK in the first 6 months. So after her passing, not just an obituary, we also read this in-depth follow-up piece exploring why her book resonated so deeply, especially with the young audience around the world. So I wrote this feature article, and I had a chat with the editor what we want to address with this story. And we decided that we want this story to reflect some of the social issues like Korea and beyond, like competition, mental health, finding yourself, all those kind of values. And this actually shows how Korean literature speaks to the global audience. So in short, the BBC now sees Korean culture not just as a trend, but as a meaningful framework for global creativity and social reflection. So Korean culture today, I believe, is more than just a pop trend. So I think it has actually become a new form of soft power. It may be just a fascinating phenomenon in the past, obviously, but today we see it as a more influential cultural force. So through the BBC coverage, I look at the data. So Korea now appears as a creative and socially conscious cultural leader. So Korean contents often tackle themes like inequality, identity, and resilience in a very smart way, I believe. And it's not offering just entertainment, but also offering some insight into our modern society. So I would say if the past few years were the time of recognition, I think today and in the future, it will be a time of resonance. So Korean culture now connects emotionally with all the global audience, and that universal connection is what really defines soft power. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Young. I just read a report that BBC, which has 453 million global audience on average every week, has evolved from the reporting system was trend-focused reporting to in-depth perspectives covering a lot of different topics, and not just hard topics, but also Korean culture-related topics. Thank you. Next, we are joined by a very familiar face, probably for all of us, Armang, who has captured the attention of global audience across multiple platforms. First, maybe through his appearance on Korean Englishman, and then Jolie YouTube channels. Now with Max, who also joined us today, they started their own channel called RMax, continuing their interaction with Korean culture. Without further ado, please welcome Armang.
Good evening. Firstly, I'd like to thank Sue, Director, and the Korean Culture Centre for the invitation. It's a true honour to be sat next to and learn from such accomplished people. We realise that we're very young in this journey. What I will focus though on for the next few minutes is the boom of Korean culture amongst young people in the UK, specifically in the social media landscape. But I want to be very clear before I start. I'm no expert, so perhaps treat what I'm about to say more as a witness statement from a Brit who had no idea about Korean culture until he was exposed to it through YouTube at 16 years of age. So in light of this, it's probably fitting I give a little background. I'm Armand, Armand입니다. And I first came in contact with Korean culture when I was served a portion of tteokbokki in my schoolyard in 2021. The Korean Englishman, Yongguk Namja, who I'm sure many of you will know and have watched, came to our school to introduce us Korean food to us British high schools. I was paired with my best friend and now business partner, Max, who's here tonight. Max, give us a wave. Hey. And yeah, we've since recently created our small production company and fast-growing YouTube channel, which we named Unwrapped. But our duo originally came about through the Korean Englishman introducing us to all sorts of Korean food during our school days. I mean, it is any school kid's dream to be able to miss class to try Korean barbecue or Korean fried chicken. So yeah, that's us. And now, this then went to the next level when the group of us high schoolers were invited to Korea in 2022. And it was by far the coolest trip any of us had been to. We were able to experience elements of Korean culture that we tried in London, but in this time in a way more authentic way in restaurants in Seoul. We were also lucky enough to visit the beautiful island of Jeju, walking up volcanic mountains, drinking halabong juice, and trying some Jeju black pork. And let me not forget also of having the absolute privilege of being taught Taekwondo by Korean Olympic athlete Lee Dae-hoon. I'll be honest, I was absolutely rubbish, but it was a legendary experience nonetheless. Then in 2023, Max and I were invited back to Korea by the Korean Englishman, this time as university students. We had graduated high school. We visited KU, Korea University, which was amazing and involved learning lots of things, including cheerleading, and maybe also learning a few Korean drinking games, I must admit. On that trip, we also met our first ever K-pop star, Miju from the Lovelies. And to be honest, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I am still enchanted by meeting her to this day. You can see my nerves when I speak about it. So at that point, we'd been to Korea as high schoolers, then as university students. What was left in the natural progression of a Korean man's life was to go to military boot camp, which we did in 2024. This was hands down the most intense experiences of our lives. And, although we only experienced the Korean military for under a week, and I want to stress, we truly developed admiration for the courage, fellowship, and respect that every single trainee showed. I personally was most touched by the fact that although we were completely foreign and didn't understand most of the instructions, the other trainees in the boot camp supported us in getting through it all, even if that meant that they'd be punished more. On that trip, we had the privilege of also visiting the largest ship in Korea, as well as meeting a group of Korean Navy Special Forces. These were truly life-changing experiences. So now that brings us on to now and the future. The past experiences that Max and I have had in Korea have made us think about Korea practically every single day since. And so I'll put it plainly, our Max have to visit Korea again. So I'll make a little request that if any of you here could support us or partner with us to make this happen, we would be incredibly grateful. So, there you have it. The story of two boys who within 3 years went from having no idea about Korean culture to traveling all over Korea, meeting K-pop stars, and perhaps most crazily joining the Korean Navy for a bit. But what I really want to communicate in this little talk is that Max and my experience of Korean culture does, to a large extent, reflect the manner through which younger generations in Britain tend to interact with Korean culture. Sure, not every British high schooler interacting with Korean culture will end up featuring on YouTube videos with millions of views, that I will admit. But the way that Korean culture tends to arrive in our lives is the same. 2 words: social media. The way that Gen Z interacts with culture is dominated by social media, where we hear about new openings of restaurants, shops, and hear about new releases of art, music, is through Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. As an example, I just typed the prompts Korean food London, and you can see on the right, thousands and thousands of videos came up, millions and millions of views, hours and hours of watch time. Today, Korean culture is extensively communicated on social media, and I believe that is a great thing. It allows the word to spread faster, so that more young people in the UK can hear about the brilliant cultural diversity of Korea. So, as someone who's fallen in love with Korea, I really hope this continues. And I believe it's so important to support creators through watching and collaborating to ensure more and more people in the UK hear about the true gem that is K-culture. Thank you.
A lot of us a question of what's your main audience when you promote Korean culture? And when we actually analyze our social media audience, and it was 18 to 25 people who's in the UK, who's based in the UK, and who's interested in Korean culture. And I guess his session showed a glimpse of what the younger generation who's based in the UK are actually thinking about Korea. Thank you. Now I would like to switch the topic from K-Content to K-Cuisine. If you walk around central London, it's so easy to spot Korean restaurants, cafes, and grocery shops. Even in Sainsbury's, you can find Korean fried chicken. And behind all of this, specifically with the case of Bibigo, she'll explore the evolution of Korean cuisine and the next wave of Korean food. Ladies and gentlemen, Jisoo Han.
Quite nervous standing up here. Hello, my name is Jisoo Han. I'm from CJ Foods UK. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the KCC UK team for inviting me to have the opportunity to talk about Korean food, not just as part of my job, but as a personal passion who loves food. I've been with CJ since 2015, and since 2023 I've been based here in the UK with one clear mission: to spread K-food in the UK and make Korean food a part of British consumers' everyday life. So today I would like to talk about how Korean food has evolved over the years and where we should be heading to make this trend more a sustainable growth, and also talk about, of course, our brand Bibigo and how Bibigo brand takes part in this momentum as a case study. So before I begin, I would like to talk about the Korean food trend in the UK. And I don't think anyone would deny that Korean food is on trend in the UK. But I would like to go through some points that prove the trend. So over the last 3 years, the Korean food export from Korea to the UK has massively grown. In 2022, it was only $63 million US. As of last year, that increased to $116 million US, recording a compound annual growth rate of 36%. The biggest category, as you may all guess, is ramen, which takes about 46% of the total food export value of 2024. But one thing I would like to note is that it's not just ramen that's growing, it's also gochujang or seaweed that shows strong growth. This proves that the Korean food boom is not just limited to a single product category. But it's not just the numbers that prove the trend. I'm sure that if you're in London especially, you can literally feel the trend living here in the UK. The number of Korean food is increasing. There are 490 Korean restaurants across the UK, of which 40 just opened over the last 1 year. And it's not just the typical or traditional Korean barbecue restaurants you see nowadays. The type of restaurants we see are diversifying from street food stalls to Michelin-starred Korean fine dining restaurants. And according to the Google Trends, searches for Korean fried chicken has increased massively. It's increased over 1,000% year on year. So everyone's searching for Korean fried chicken recipes, and it's also huge on food service sector. Korean fried chicken is the most common cuisine dishes that's added on the menus of the restaurants in the UK. But this is not just the Korean restaurants, but it's also the British restaurants and pubs that add the Korean fried chicken on the menu. And at the same time, the dining out trend is shifting towards home dining as well. M&S launched their tteokbokki early this year. I will not comment on the taste. And also Waitrose has reported early this year in February that their sales for gochujang has increased 71% compared to the same period last year. They've also reported that their customers are cooking Korean food as a fusion cuisine, so they're applying authentic gochujang to their British, Italian, and French meals. And they're not just cooking at home, they're also sharing these experiences at home on their social media organically. And we see just on TikTok in the UK alone, the number of Korean food related content is increasing over 30% every year. So how did this food trend start and how has it evolved? If you take a step back and look at how Korean food has evolved, I think we can identify it into two distinctive phases, and now we're taking the next step to make this trend sustainable. So K-Food 1.0 is a government-led, back in the late 2000s. The focus was on promoting Korean cuisines overseas, telling people what Korean food is through national campaigns and events. And then came K-Food 2.0, which was more content-led. So instead of telling people what Korean food is, it was more about showing people how to enjoy Korean food through contents. And now we are entering the K-Food 3.0. This phase is still evolving, but one thing is clear, that K-Food is moving beyond promotion and content towards something deeper, which I will talk about in my later slides. So the story of K-Food globalization, I think, really began in 2009 when the Korean government launched their initiative called the Korean Cuisine to the World campaign. The goal was very ambitious. It was to make Korean cuisine one of the top 5 world cuisines in the world. And, but this campaign was very focused on specific menus like bibimbap, kimchi, or bulgogi, as you can see on the photos. And after the government-led promotions in 2010s, the K-Food entered its second phase, a content-led expansion. And this time it wasn't about official campaigns. Instead, Korean dramas or K-pop groups or even YouTube creators became the new ambassadors of Korean food. And through contents, people began to discover Korean food just naturally through stories and emotions rather than advertisements. And now we are entering the next phase of Korean food trend, what I would like to call experience-led culture. So K-food today is no longer just about the flavor and the taste. It's about how people experience it emotionally, socially, and culturally. There are 3 key factors that I think will shape the next chapter. And the first one is storytelling beyond contents. So storytelling will play a crucial role in transforming K-food into an emotional value and a cultural experience. It's not just about showing what Korean food is, but showing about how it's enjoyed and what it means culturally to the Korean people. For example, I want to take a look at the ice cup and pouch drinks that you may have seen in Asian groceries these days. It's quite popular among the younger generation. I'm not sure if you will agree, but I'm sure there's other better options of drinks out there, but people are buying an ice cup and a pouch drink, pouring into an ice cup and enjoying it as if they were in a Korean convenience store, as they've seen in maybe their favorite K-dramas. So consumers are not just buying that product, they're buying that experience of having that drink in Korea. And second is cross-industry collaboration. K-food can expand further by working across different industries, from restaurants to chefs or food manufacturers like us, and retails. These collaborations will help build a more holistic food ecosystem and make K-food more accessible to the global consumers. And finally is the platform. So these experiences, I believe, should not cease at a personal level. It's about building community and engagement, both online and offline. And by creating the experiences and making people connect through K-food, I believe that we can build a genuine community who wants to become a part of Korean culture. Now that I've talked about how Korean food is evolving, let's take a look at our Bibigo brand's case and how we are actually putting this into practice. So CJ Foods' vision and mission has perfectly captured this direction. Our vision is to be a leading food company enriching lives. It means that we don't just sell food products, but we aim to create experiences that bring people joy and connection and inspirations through our products. Just a brief history about our company. So we began as the first sugar manufacturer of Korea and the founding business of today's Samsung. And we started our global business as focusing more on exports, and now we're building local offices to adapt to the global market. And now CJ's global master brand, Bibigo, is available over 60 countries with a portfolio of 100 plus products and annual global sales of $1.1 billion US. And the recent change of Bibigo brand reflects our ambition to share Korean food as a culture, not just as a product. So Bibigo introduced a renewed brand identity just last year. The new logo, the two green curved lines, they symbolize papsang, which means a shared dining table, and also the connection of people having that food together on the papsang. It moved away from the traditional stone. It may remind you of bibimbap. So this is reflecting our commitment to broaden the scope of K-food beyond specific dishes.
와, 비비고가 바뀌었어. 비비고가 식탁을 비비고가 세계를 비비고가 모두를 새로워진 비비고 세계를 더 맛있게 앞으로도 Live delicious.
So this ad shows how we moved away from the bibimbap concept to a more of a shared joyfulness, enjoying Korean food on the same table, papsang. And to sustain this growth momentum and lead the experience-led Korean food trend, Bibigo is first building a full portfolio of Korean food from in the kitchen categories like sauces to on the table, ready meals and snack to make Korean food accessible to everyone anytime and everywhere. And second, we are actively engaging in collaborations and consumers through various pop-ups. So in this photo, you might think that it may have been taken in Korea, but actually it was a 시장 or market concept pop-up that we executed last year in Paris Olympics. And third is the ecosystem. To make Korean food global, I don't think we can do it alone. We believe that we need to grow together with different industries in the food industry. That's why CJ operates Cuisine K project to discover and nurture young chefs specializing in Korean for them to go outside Korea and open their own restaurants to make Korean food more available. Before I close, I would like to share why this moment in time is a very exciting moment for us working in the Korean food industry. If you look to the right, Korean food, Korean cuisine is not mostly tasted cuisine in the last 3 months. But on the other side, you can see that people are willing to try and they have the appetite for Korean cuisine. So there is still much more opportunity that's still on tap for us. And our role, I believe, is to turn this curiosity into experience and make Korean food not just a trend, but a part of everyday life of British consumers. Thank you.
I don't think the Korean food would have been so widely introduced without the well-executed strategies like Bibigo showed to us. Thank you so much. We have explored how Korean food products have captivated the public, and I think now it's the time to move on to how Korean-inspired tasting menu, rooted in tradition, refined with precision, have surprised London. Ji-Hoon Kim, the executive chef of Mandarin Oriental London Mayfair, will share why he opened a Korean chef table called Somsi in the heart of London and his passion to promote refined Korean cuisine.
Very honored to be here. So when this project, my name is Ji-Hoon, and then I'm an executive chef of Mandarin Oriental Hotel. And also there's a signature restaurant called Somsi, which is Korean fine dining chef table. So when I took this project, I was in Melbourne, and I was very contented with what the lifestyle, the lean back and then outback style, and then this project came in London, opening Mandarin Oriental Hotel, and then there's an intimate space of 14 seats, and that was blank. There was no vision and plan. So I was very interested. That time I knew the chef called Akira Beck, and then we worked together. And then we said something that we can put together to introduce in London. But we didn't have a very clear direction. So we were skeptical of how London people would react, or UK. And also, we want to be successful at the end of the day, and then many reasons, finance aspect, and then also we hope to achieve some, award and so on. And so we opened as a Korean inspired cuisine, leaving second doors for us to play around if it doesn't work out. Yeah. So it opened 2024 September. And then you can see the concept was Korean inspired, and then the next slide is just jumping on. You can see the second picture there is one of the examples what we try to do, try to impress people in London. That's not really what Korean people eat. It was very much. So we as a traditionally trained in the French cuisine and European cuisine, and I worked in 11 different countries in the world, and then so I want to showcase, of course, the craftsmanship, and then also my personal stories, and also that all this together. And it was successful in the beginning. There were a lot of interest. People are very much excited, and then also the food was good, ambiance was great, nothing wrong. And one night I was, and then obviously we have a lot of people who traveled to Korea and then dined, and we also had this, recently had a guest that she is very almost expert to Korean food, and so they, when they ate, and then they, it was good, and then like, does Korean eat goat cheese? Because I had this, like I said, the Korean inspired cuisine. We wanted to be safe, so I made the, goat cheese was very good with as a welcome snack together with the beetroot, which is salad. You do salad with mint and goat cheese in many other part of the world, and so we did it, to be Korean. I made it as a beetroot kimchi, and then I did the goat cheese salad. And for me it was, I tried to do Korean food, and that wasn't really Korean. So there was a lot of question time to time, although they are satisfied diners. And at one point I realized I served the whole entire course, and then there was one course was very much, which was this duck dish, looked like Wellington. And that's actually, I thought a lot of plan. I mean, we put a lot of effort. So the pastry was made with the gochujang, and then the duck was cooked with the doenjang, and then the vegetable there inside was cooked ganjang. So it's representing trio of jang. But obviously, although we try a lot, then this is not really that more or less is duck Wellington. And then I realized I was hiding that behind the pillar, and then seeing a response of the guests when I served these dishes, and I was very much I was happy, but also like I was questioning a lot of things. Does guests come to Korean somsi, which was dosa before, and then do they expect this kind of food to eat? What kind of food they expect, and then I'm sure there's a lot of restaurant does duck Wellington in London, and then in part of Europe, and so we had a break in January because of the ceiling was leaking, typical of the pre-opening time. So we had a very fortunate time of 3 weeks, and then I revisit the way we cook, and also what the guests also would like to eat when they come to dosa, which was dosa. We took bold decision to remove from shifting from Korean inspired to Korean cuisine inspired with traveling around the world. So it's from 10% of Korean touch to 90% of Korean with 10% of inspiration. So of course we did some challenges and mistakes, because when you do the Korean food, we don't eat courses as a Korean, right? We eat in the big dining table with with the others. So and our diet is very different than European diet. European diet is centered with the protein and the side dishes, where Korean is rice is centered, and then the other components are accompanying the rice to eat. So that's very completely different approach, and obviously I can't serve from 7 courses or 8 courses with all the rices. So we had a lot of thought, and the challenges along the way. We challenges if we do 90% of Korean food, or so-called Korean food inspired global touch. You need to have, which is now the the challenges, which is dining style, which I touched base just now. Guest expectations is one thing. Sourcing ingredient was the biggest challenge. Obviously, the vegetable grow in Korea doesn't grow in London or UK or even Europe. That's why when I was in America many years ago, working in San Francisco, when you go to entry level of Korean restaurant, you will see the same ingredients that you can see in Paris, for example. Korean restaurant is usually lots of carrots and onions in the soups, because that's very much the vegetable that you can find in Korea. The part of the reason was, in my opinion, maybe I could be wrong, but the chefs now on the front line. But even 20 years ago, the restaurant was run by ex. For example, in America, I was working for some restaurant as a part-timer. The owner, which was the chef owner, was a mathematics teacher back in Korea. So not necessarily they were driven by craftsmanship. Neither were, the pure reason they are settler of the first generation, yada yada, and then you need to make sure you have a financially successful. So that, I think it's all linked with our lifestyle, and not sorry, the lifestyle we with the other presenters touch base that we have a big leap of economic growth after Korea War, the Civil War, and then very hefty, long years of Japan colonization. So we were very busy to bring the country to the where we are now. So we were, I think, as my generation, I witnessed my parents, even my dad, used to eating the bark of the tree when back in the days, because there's nothing to eat. And now we are in the conversation. Oh, what we're gonna eat tonight? We had the beef yesterday. We're gonna eat. Shall we eat shrimps? So it's a really day and night in my generation, also from his generation. I would watch it. My house was falling down on the one side of the wall, but then suddenly my dad bought this kokiri, what is it, the elephant logo rice cooker, which was a symbol of, the change of your status back in the days. And I was like, all these changes was so fast, and then we were educated to get better and better, and then we lost. We had a deep history of 4,000 years of history of the culture, which yes, the K-pop is dominating. I mean, it's really touching many people's young hearts, but we have a really deep history of, like, if I was looking at this little paragraph I was reading, where Korea, the man and woman were living in separate rooms. Something we were lost and forgotten a lot of things, and so where am I now? Yes, going back to where I am. So I think it's very important. We need to be able to. I hate to say, or it's not something to compare, but Japan, our beloved neighbors, their Japanese restaurants. So I think we were kind of taking a similar steps what Japanese cuisine was happening 20 years ago. I was also sushi chef for many years ago. I was working in one of the Japanese restaurants. I made the California roll, which was not really Japanese food, in San Francisco. And the guest was, I could see because it's sushi bar, and then my mathematics teacher previously, he was serving us sushi, and they say, and then we call each other, my name is Akiko, because it sounds very authentic, and then we're serving us sushi, and then the guy was eating with a lot of mayonnaise, and then eating, master seafood, it's so delicious. And so that's tradition. Yes, it's very important. We have all these fried chickens and sundaes, and it's really, but it's not really as a chef. It's not. It's really the 2% of what Korean cuisine is, and I think that's where the challenge is, that we need to. Also, it's very big scandal. I mean, the big things that government also needs to be able to export the products that has been very challenging, I guess. Like, for example, of course, we have cultural centers, education center, but then the fresh goods. We are now there, which is now next responsibility. We are there, but we need to be able to bring those products that is touching top 22% or 3% of the people who are interested. We have a gochujang is great, but then there is a gochujang aged for 6 years. Gochujang they aged for 20 years, but we are not able to touch this kind of product. But there's people who always is what's next. I think that's where very important. You in New York or in Dubai, even Dubai, I used to work in Dubai, we'll be able to import every single fish from Suzuki market and every single vegetable from certain Hokkaido Gakushima. But we can't bring the Korean seafood, but they have same water, which is 동해, although they think they say Japanese, but it's 동해. So that's, I think this is next chapter, as everybody has to work together. Yes, and then like I said, we need to understand history. Even me as a Korean, I don't know much about Korean cuisine, I must say, because there's certain products, certain. So I bought this Korean cookbook, which was the assembly of all the forgotten cookbooks and aged of 200 years, 300 years. It makes some things doesn't make sense, but some of them like really interesting. We never ate chicken in our life. Back in the days, it was very much influenced by Japan colonization. So it was always a peasant and squab, partridges, and which was so. If I serve a squab or partridges in my restaurant, my Korean guests will come back and say, "We don't need partridges." Probably say that, but this was lost histories of what Korean cuisine used to be. And also, of course, we lost a lot of these treasures by the colonization and wars, and then all this, the hardship we went through. And also, we have to understand, we mentioned about this hard time that we went through, which is borikoge, which is a barley hill, we say, because we have nothing to eat. That's why they were only eating barley back in the days. That's why they call it barley hill. It was very difficult time when the crops are not ready, and then they have nothing to eat. And there's cuisine particularly that was developed because of this season. And then I think this is also important that we understand this is, yes, it's a very difficult time, but also embrace this moment. And one of our president made, back in the days, no rice for Wednesday because of a shortage of rice. And that's why there's, the buckwheat and the wheat came up, and then there was culture of the no rice on the Wednesday. I think this is kind of things that are very unique. It's not something to hide or be embarrassed, but it's something very unique and to embrace. Yeah, and then the next thing is really to share the knowledge of what we know, and then yeah, that's it, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chef, for sharing your the challenges you went through and your thoughts and insight that from all of your great experiences. Thank you. And we are very excited to see how Somshi would go further, including tradition and innovation into all the dishes. Now, I would like to invite 4 of our speakers in front of the stage and get some questions from all of our audiences. Please welcome them with another round of applause. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, and my colleague over there will pass your mic on. Sir, from here, yes.
First of all, thank you very much for really, really nice stories and inside information from 4 of those. Was really, really helpful. This is really, really nice. Maybe my questions might be too late to put it now, as you all says Korean culture is now all in mainstream, so popular and everywhere. But again, I would like to ask you, you poor girls, again, why Korean? Why now and why Korean? Especially generation in UK, why it's so popular? Of course, in the other world as well. Why now in Korea? On social media, why this food is so popular? Why? Why is that? I mean, because food, culture and food, and all everything's okay. Music and drama, all different culture have different style. So it could be different country now, but So I would like to ask you again, why Korea now again, please?
Because Korean food is so good. But if I say it on a more serious note, maybe I'd say, especially in what we kind of do in videos, is that the culture is so visual and so present. The food, we see it, but so for us to communicate it on videos, it's so easy to do so. And so in a time where social media is a big driver, that works perfectly.
Maybe I can just add a little bit. Of course, they can talk about Korean food, but for me, I mainly cover Korean content, like Korean film dramas and kind of stuff. So for me, when I interview people, why you love Korean culture, Korean film dramas and kind of stuff. One thing that I got a lot is that they actually emotionally touch on their kind of life, because we are really good at to take people's life in a very emotionally. So I think that's one of the very strengths that our contents actually have. And obviously, thanks to all the global streaming platforms, because we had all the great Korean dramas of film back, in the time before, but there was no access, to it. So now, thanks to with the rise of the global streaming platforms like Netflix or all the other social media, people can actually get to see our content. But we already had the potential in the past as well, but people didn't actually see it. But now, with the all the technology kind of development, now more and more people actually have to watch our dramas and films and everything, and it actually kind of pays off. We already had that kind of thing before, but now with the whole technology kind of development, it actually made it happen like that.
I also agree with her point. It's the availability that's strengthened over the last years. But also, I think it's not just limited to K-food or K-dramas. I think it's a 360-degree. It's not just Korean food, it's K-beauty, and it's affecting each other as well. So it's happening simultaneously. That's affecting each industry, and and we're benefiting from it. And also, it's not just the people who have the globalization. So everyone's going to Korea and experiencing Korean food, Korean dramas, but also it's the Korean people going global and knowing that the global consumers do like our food. For example, tteokbokki. 10 years ago when I first joined our company, we thought that no consumers would eat tteokbokki because the texture is quite new. But we found out that actually it's something very new, but also very tasty, that it's not something that people will not will put off the consumers. So I think it's that reciprocal knowledge that we learned about Korean food as a Korean and also as a global consumers.
Yes. From chef perspective, if you look at many cuisines around the world, there's not many cuisine actually has a very strong cold food, which is in France called gamaze. This is very unique. So if you go to Southeast Asia, yes, there's great tom yums, and then the curries is very dominated, and India as well, the curries. And then also certain part of China, yes, there is some cold kitchen, cold food, but I think in France you can have a great salad, and Italy as well, what do you call it, antipastos, Spain with the small tapas and the marination and all this. These are really different. So having cold food and not cold food, it makes big difference in my opinion. I worked and lived in Singapore and also sometime in Malaysia. Also Middle East, yes, there's great mezes, and also in Malaysia we have a great some cold, but not as many as Korean food is. That's fascinating for me. And then also, I don't know how true is it, but we had the hansing nut, which is you are supposed to close all the fire because of some story. Maybe somebody knows better, but it's the day that you should not use the fire. so that you only eat cold food. I think that's one of the reasons, but you very strong Korean food that our ancestor not just giving up cold food because of harsh weather and then geographical condition of mountains and then surrounded by oceans, but then they really got into this preservation and then you'll be able to eat cold, which is very good.
Hi, thank you so much for a very interesting panel. My name is Jessie Lau, I'm a freelance journalist. I'm the founder of New Tide Media Network, which is Britain's only East and Southeast Asian journalism network. Mike, I have two questions, one for Ji-hoon and one for Yoon. So maybe first Ji-hoon, I was really interested in your explanation of forgotten food histories in Korea and how you've tried to explore that in your own cooking, like partridge you mentioned and buckwheat. Is this a trend that you're seeing in among other chefs in Korea or the diaspora, like sort of wanting to go back to these traditional Korean foods that maybe were styles that were lost during the colonization? And also, do you have I guess tips for like where we can learn more about this or resources, because that's a very interesting topic. And then my second question is for Yoon Lee. Big fan of your work. I'm really interested in this idea of Korean K-pop culture outside of Koreanness. So I've been following like groups like Cat's Eye, right, where they say they use the K-pop training method, but they are like a global girl group and they're not a K-pop group, and it's very interesting. I wondered what you thought about this idea of like K-pop without Koreans, essentially, and how you cover that as a journalist. Thank you.
Yeah, many other chefs, I think, obviously they like I mentioned, is really hasn't been long enough. The chef-driven restaurants are coming up. Like I said, even 15 years ago, were not many, maybe one or two really. Now, all those famous restaurants were well established and great restaurants. They are owned by chef, or they're not necessarily chasing financial success only, but to bring the right message to the broad clients and also a certain reputation. So obviously the quality is been developing quite a lot, and they study and then they revisit because in order to stay true Korean, you need to really understand the history.
So first of all, thank you so much for being a big fan of my work. And I actually remember there was one BBC article and a touch on that issue, like in a K-pop group without Korean, obviously. But I personally think it's now, I believe the K-pop could be a kind of new genre, like even you can create like a K-pop group without any Korean people, obviously. But I think maybe we can actually tell that this might be just a transition period, because obviously we are very familiar with the older K-pop group, with all the Korean people who grew up, who understand all the Korean culture. But I think now K-pop gained like more global popularity at the moment. That I think we can actually develop even further into like the K-pop group without Korean people. That can be actually possible. And for example, I remember that the BBC recently produced this documentary called "The Made in Korea," making this whole Korean boy band. But they're all British, but we can actually call it this is a Korean band to create K-pop. So I think although some people might have some doubts at the moment, but I think in the long term, obviously we can definitely have a K-pop group, because it's kind of new genre, like all the kind of style, like choreography, things like that. There's some element that I can actually create this Korean as a kind of new genre. So I think that can be also possible as well.
We'll start from here.
Hello, thank you again for all this conversation about food. I think it was really interesting, and also about the work at BBC. I also have, I have two very different questions. My first one is about food, of course, and as we can see, for example, in France, we saw the emergence of this kind of new cuisine connecting the French cuisine and the Korean cuisine with the research on flavors of traditional flavors of Korea, but adapting with the modern cuisine and modern French cuisine. And so I wanted to know if in the future, do you think that there will be new connections with different European cuisines? So not only West Europe, like we think immediately about France or maybe Italy, but also Central and East Europe. And my second question is more about the commercial value. So if I ask some of my friends of my age, I will ask, oh, what do you love about Korea? And immediately they will say, oh, you know, I love K-pop, and then all like, you know, the cosmetic, about that cream, I will try that. And then some of them are like, but you know, that's so beautiful, I want to go to Seoul to make surgery. And even when I went to Seoul, actually, I was so surprised because I saw so many young girls with like kind of something on the nose, and I asked my mom, and I was like, did they have accidents or car accidents, you know? And she was like, no, they just, you know, they come to do surgery. And so I think that as I'm half Korean, I feel slightly disappointed on that point, because I think that culture, you know, Korean culture is so rich and marvelous. And I feel a little bit sad that sometimes people insist on like the surgery aspect, the cosmetic aspect, which it's sometimes, of course, it's normal, it's part of our society nowadays, but it's in another aspect, I think it loses also some human maybe aspect. So this one.
C'est a bon question, mademoiselle. Yeah, so basically France had we all know, you know, there's a Renaissance, and obviously also France was very big influenced by the Italian, well, the marriage of the two queen and king, and there was a big because France, I think it was already one of the three global power. They had time to enjoy the culture, so they had the time to develop. So meaning they had the Nouvelle Haute Cuisine and then the Nouvelle Cuisine, and there's always this change in French cuisine. I think although they are very much rooted in the deep history, there was always room to grand chef to change the concept, and there was already established the personal touch based on their travel and their childhood. Whereas when you just turn a little bit to look at Italy, if you do some curry carbonara, somebody try to do, and then maybe some other Italian come step from, it'll be big fight. So there is, so it's the same for us as well, that we, I don't know what it is, how to explain, but when I cook this somsi, although it is very much Korean, but like I mentioned, that the vegetable we cannot get, or fish we cannot get in London, so I rather, instead of using frozen fish they are flown, we're using corn or seafood in London, and then we're using, for example, we have a namul, which is a mountain vegetable in Korea, but we can't get it here, so I rather use it. Artichoke, for example, we don't have artichoke in Korea, but I cook with ginger and garlic, which is unheard of in European cuisine. That artichoke usually cook with vinegar and chardonnay, etc. So yes, this is now very how to say volatile time. I mean, like really happening time, with all this young chef study and then they want to do good food. So there will be obviously the second leap, and then the combination of all these changes will certainly happen. And we are one of the restaurants as well, and then we are observing many.
So I could just briefly answer, and probably you can add a little bit. So obviously, you know, the second question is related to kind of Korean beauty standard, obviously, and I totally relate to that, obviously, because I was, you know, born and raised in South Korea, and even, you know, whenever I go back to Korea, I just feel like, oh, I became so fat. I feel like I'm really overweight, and I totally understand that. But I think now, obviously, there's this part, you know, having this all this beauty standard, you have to be really perfect, because if you look up to your kind of K-pop idols on the stage, you look really perfect, very, you know, sleek, you know, nice, beautiful. I totally understand that. But I think, you know, among young people, there's another kind of, you know, conversation going around at the moment, because of, obviously, you know, when I covered that story on, you know, I want to die on tteokbokki, and how this book actually tells in your life, because I interviewed many, you know, young Korean women. And most of them are, you know, talking about things like, you know, the thing that they can really relate to her book is because she talked about things like, you know, because you overthinking, you know, what other people think about you, and you really try to embrace yourself as you are now. And the thing, that kind of message is now spreading around among young people. So probably, you know, obviously I understand that, you know, to come at the kind of dark side of, you know, maybe, you know, the beautiful K-pop. But, you know, at the same time, there are other kind of K-pop groups, like, you know, even like BTS, like Love Yourself and Embrace Yourself, things like that. That kind of message is also spreading around among young people. So I think, you know, probably, you know, that's the kind of the two side, you know, of things, you know, in South Korea, obviously, just like the other society.
We're almost out of time. But before we go, I have one final question to all of our panelists. Go back to our first question. So, after all this, what do you expect to see from Korean culture, and what do you hope to see from Korean culture? What's next?
I think I'll let my seniors speak first.
I'm a very corporate person, so I want to talk about the vision that our chairman had. Just, I think 5 years ago it was, he wants the world to be, people eat Korean food once a week. Don't tell our chairman, I can't remember on top of my head the exact numbers, but watch Korean dramas twice a week, and watch Korean movie. She'll clarify later, but every month. So I think that's the vision that we had as CJ Group, which does not just food but also entertainment business, beauty business. We want the people to actually be part of Korean culture. And back 5 years ago, I thought that would not be possible, but it looks like we are heading there. So I think that vision, as a person working for CJ and a person who's really working towards to spread Korean food in the UK, that this will be a very near future for us.
For food, I think it will be very nice to see the some fresh fishes and vegetables. So that not just only the ramen. Yes, it's very good to inspire many people, but also we would like to bring the real Korean food that you can. When you go to Korea, you eat this kind of food. That we'll be able to bring it to London. It will be great.
I'm not really corporate, but as a journalist, obviously I want to cover more, you know, Korean stories. I want to see more bright side of, you know, Korean culture on the BBC platform, obviously, and I want no rejection when I pitch some story ideas on Korean culture. So that's the kind of the thing that I want as a journalist.
Yeah, I'd say that we've heard about bringing Korean culture to the UK, but what I think will happen in the future is also more and more that opposite wave of people from the UK and Europe travelling to experience Korean culture authentically, like we had the privilege of doing, and I see that really growing in the future more and more.
From that, we will wrap up the second session, but I know that you guys still have some questions, but we still have sessions 3, which is open forum. So this is the session for all of you to ask the question to our speakers and discuss the topics that we have raised from the first 2 sessions. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and thank you again our panelists for the presentation. Thank you.